So, the Great Pyramid of Giza. For 4,500 years, it has stood there as one of history's greatest engineering marvels, and, honestly, one of its biggest puzzles. The question is, how, without any of our modern tech, did the ancient Egyptians build something on such an absolutely colossal scale? And look, forget all the ancient alien theories. We're going to dive right into the actual engineering and see what the real evidence tells us.
All right, first things first, let's just try to wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this thing. The Great Pyramid is built from an estimated 2.3 million individual stone blocks, and each one of those weighs several tons.
Okay, so what about the total weight of the structure? It's a staggering 6 million tons. To give you some perspective, that's more than 10 times the weight of the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world today.
Okay, but this is where it gets really mind-bending. The entire thing was apparently finished in just 20 years. Just let that sink in for a moment. To hit that deadline, it means that for 20 straight years, a crew had to quarry, haul, and perfectly set one of these massive blocks every 2 to 3 minutes, non-stop, day and night. The logistics are just staggering to even think about.
So, yeah, that leads us to the big question, right? Without iron tools, without even using the wheel for transport, how was this monumental feat even possible? And this isn't a story about aliens. No, this is a story about incredible human ingenuity.
So, how are we going to tackle this 4,500-year-old puzzle? Well, we're going to break it down piece by piece. We'll start from the ground up, literally, with the pyramid's perfect foundation. Then, we'll follow the incredible supply chain they set up for the stones. After that, we're going to get into the Great Ramp debate, check out a pretty radical inside-out solution, and finally, pull it all together to reveal the system of genius that made it all happen.
All right, let's get into it. Section 1. A perfect foundation. Long before they even thought about lifting a single block, an absolutely incredible feat of precision engineering had to happen right there on the ground. The true genius of the pyramid doesn't start at the top, it starts right here, with this impossibly perfect foundation.
So, how on earth did they pull this off? Well, first up was alignment. They didn't have a compass, right? So they looked up. By tracking the stars around the celestial pole, they managed to align the pyramid's base to true north, south, east, and west with an accuracy that is just astonishing. Then they had to make it level. To create a perfectly flat base across 13 acres of bumpy ground, they used a method that was simple but absolutely brilliant: water. Picture this. They build a whole grid of low mud walls across this massive area, then they flood it. Anything sticking up above the water's surface, which is of course perfectly level, gets chiseled away. Genius.
Okay, section 2, the stone supply chain. So you've got this perfectly level foundation. Now comes the real headache. How do you get millions of giant stones to the site? This wasn't just building something. This was managing a supply chain on an absolutely epic scale.
Now, most of the core blocks, they came from a local quarry right there on the Giza Plateau, which makes sense. But the really beautiful ones, the smooth white limestone casing stones that made the whole pyramid shine in the sun, those were quarried way over in a place called Tura, a full 250 kilometers away.
And we're not talking about small rocks here. Some of these blocks, especially the huge granite beams they use for the chambers inside, weighed up to 50 tons. 50! To put that in perspective, that's like trying to move 3 city buses, 3 of them, as a single block of stone.
So how in the world do you move something the weight of 3 buses for hundreds of kilometers? Simple. You turn the Nile River into your personal superhighway. They would load these massive blocks onto enormous boats and just float them downriver to the construction site. A brilliant solution using what they had right in front of them.
But okay, moving them is one thing. How did they actually cut these stones so perfectly? They didn't have iron tools, just relatively soft copper. The secret sauce, it turns out, was a little bit of ancient chemistry. They figured out that if they mixed their copper with a bit of arsenic, they created a bronze alloy, and you can see it right here in the numbers. This arsenical copper was way harder, way stronger than pure copper. That, combined with quartz sand as an abrasive, was their secret weapon for slicing through solid rock.
All right, next up, Section 3, the Great Ramp Debate. So we've got our foundation, we've got our materials, but now we've got to face the biggest question of all, the one everybody argues about. How did they get those millions of blocks hundreds of feet up into the air? And this brings us to one of the hottest debates in all of Egyptology.
You know, the theory most of us probably heard in school is the simple one. They built a single, massive, straight ramp. It would have stretched from the ground all the way up, getting longer and higher as the pyramid itself got taller. And, you know, it makes sense intuitively.
But, and this is a big but, here comes the plot twist. Modern engineering analysis shows this theory just doesn't hold up. When you actually run the numbers, it falls apart. For a ramp to reach the top at a gentle enough slope that people can actually drag stones up it, it would have to be over a mile long. Think about that. The ramp itself would have contained more stone and taken more work to build than the pyramid. The math just doesn't add up. It's implausible.
Okay, section 4, an inside-out solution. So if that massive external ramp is basically a myth, what did they do instead? Well, a much more clever and elegant solution has come to light, one that suggests they actually built the pyramid from the inside out.
This is what's called the internal ramp theory. The basic idea is genius. Use a short, simple external ramp for the bottom third of the pyramid, the really heavy lifting part. But for the rest of it, the upper 2/3, you build a ramp that spirals up inside the pyramid itself, like a hidden corridor just behind the outer walls.
And you can see how it works right here. On the left, you've got the ramp corkscrewing its way up, totally hidden within the structure. But the really clever part is what happens at the corners. See that on the right? They would have left these little open notches, kind of like balconies. This gives them just enough room to use a simple crane or lever system to turn the block 90 degrees and send it up the next section of the ramp. It's so much more efficient.
Which brings us to our final section, a system of genius. So, was this internal ramp the one big secret, the single magic trick that explains it all? Well, the latest analysis says probably not. The real answer, it seems, is that there wasn't just one secret, but a whole system of brilliant ideas working together.
Yeah, there was no single magic bullet solution here. What we have to remember is that the ancient Egyptians were brilliant, adaptive engineers. They didn't just have one plan. They had a whole toolbox of them, and they used the right tool for the right job at the right time.
The takeaway here is that they used a whole system of techniques. So yeah, you probably have the hybrid ramps, a short one outside, an internal one for the top. But then you also have evidence they might have used clever mechanical systems, like counterweight pulleys, maybe inside spaces like the Grand Gallery. They also knew a simple physics trick. Wetting the sand in front of their sledges makes it way easier to drag heavy blocks. And of course, for that last little nudge into place, you can't beat a good old-fashioned lever. It was all of these things working together. So when you look at the Giza Plateau today, you're not just seeing the result of one big trick, you're seeing the legacy of this incredibly flexible, super smart, and highly organized engineering system that could solve any problem they've faced.
So in the end, the ultimate solution wasn't some lost secret or alien tech. It was a combination of brilliant ideas, a complete toolkit of human ingenuity applied with unbelievable focus and discipline. And it really makes you wonder, right? With new technology allowing us to peer inside these ancient monuments in ways we never could before, what other hidden rampways or secret chambers or engineering mysteries are just sitting there waiting for us to find?